Drought, false prophets, and Rhode Island. What were they thinking? All today in today's episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband. Today we're going through Jeremiah chapters 14 through 17. Tomorrow we're going to go through Jeremiah chapter 18 through 22. That's right. So let's dig in. Here we are. What stood out to me? I'm just going to go through a few verses that stood out to me tonight. Then we're going to talk about what in the world was Rhode Island thinking. So chapter 14 verses 1 through 17:27 that we're talking about tonight. This message is a very long section, but it was delivered during a very severe drought that had hit Judah. Now, verse 14, to be specific here, it says, "But the Lord said to me, These prophets are prophesying a lie in my name. I did not send them, nor did I command them or speak to them. They are prophesying to you a false vision, worthless divination, and the deceit of their own minds." Now, what this is, these verses are citing four methods that false prophets use to portray what they're trying to get across. Number one, they were prophesying a lie in the Lord's name. That was the first method that they used. I'm tongue-tied tonight, excuse me. The second was they were using false visions, basically telling things that are visions that maybe they had seen, but were not necessarily of God. Third, worthless divinations. And number four, they were speaking the deceit of their own minds. Now, these were four methods that these false prophets through this section were using. Now, chapter 15, verse 4, it says, "I will make them a whore to all the kingdoms of the earth because of Manasseh, son of Hezekiah, the king of Judah, for what he did in Jerusalem." Does that mean they're punishing Jerusalem for what King Manasseh did, even though Manasseh is already dead at this time? Well, these verses, they contain literally the only reference to King Manasseh, who lived from 696 BC to 642 BC in the book of Jeremiah. He is listed here as the reason for the terrible state of affairs in Judah. But so his terrible things that he did were so far-reaching that Manasseh introduced that Judah was still bound for destruction even after the revival that was introduced by his grandson, King Josiah, in 621 BC. Now, we read about all this in 2 Kings chapter 23. Verse 26 is going to be specific about this scenario here that we're talking about. Now, chapter 16 as a whole. What is going on during Jeremiah's lifetime and during this time period that would cause all of this struggle and this strife? And of course, Jeremiah having to be told to repent. All right, in 15, right at the end of chapter 15, Jeremiah was told to repent. In verse 19, God actually startled him by calling on him to return or to repent to him, and God wanted him to stop talking this way, the way that he was talking in verses 15 through 18, all these bad things that he was saying, so that he could take him back and make him stand in God's presence once again. God called Jeremiah's words that were in verse 15 through 18 in chapter 15 worthless. That's the key word there, worthless. Remember that word that we talked about before. The prophet must repent if he is to continue to serve as the Lord's spokesperson or spokesman. In verses 20 through 21, these words basically amount to a recommissioning service for Jeremiah. So here he is restarting up, because even Jeremiah fell prey to doubt and to fear and to the depression of it all, as it said. So what was happening during Jeremiah's time? Just what we say here. He witnessed the shattering and destruction of 10 tribes of Israel in the northern kingdom by Assyria. Then he witnessed the takeover of the Assyrians by the Babylonians. Now he's witnessing the wickedness of the kingdom of Judah, where even the priests of the temple had Jeremiah placed in the stockade. And now he's experiencing the destruction of and the scattering of the remaining tribes of Judah. So by seeing all of this stuff, it's no wonder that he seems so depressed and, I don't know, almost indignant in a way, and in pain and hurting because of what is going on. This is heartbreaking to him. Then I get to chapter 17, and the verses that stick out to me were 9, 10, and 11. And there's a specific reason for these. These verses contain 3 wisdom sayings. The first one in verse 9, the heart is more deceitful than anything and is incurable, or is desperate of sorts. That was the first one that stuck out to me. The heart is more treacherous than anything else and is desperate. Number 10, verse 10, 17 verse 10. I, the Lord, examine the mind and I test the heart. So does God test us? Sure he does. Absolutely. It says here, I, the Lord, search minds and test hearts. I will reward each person for what he has done. I will reward him for the results of his actions. How about that? Now, the mind and the heart are all hidden elements of the human personality, but God sees each of these perfectly. He can see your thoughts. He can see your mind. He can see your heart and the reason why you do things. Not just the things you do, but the reasons why you do the things you do. That is what is important to God, and he sees every bit of it. Chapter 17, verse 11, as a partridge that hatches eggs, which it has not laid, so is he who makes a fortune but unjustly. In the midst of his days it will forsake him, and in the end he will be a fool. So this partridge, which is perhaps a sand goose at the time, a sand grouse, hatches eggs it didn't lay. Some people amass wealth via the sweat of others. And kind of like these birds, they're going to discover that their wealth does not last forever. Now, we read about that in Proverbs chapter 23, verses 4 and 5, didn't we? We certainly did. So, what's this got to do with Rhode Island? Well, I'll tell you what it's got to do with Rhode Island. Verse 13, Lord, the hope of Israel, all who abandon you will be put to shame. Wow. What a profound verse. You know, verse 13, the first part. O Lord, the hope of Israel, all who forsake you will be put to shame, or will be ashamed, as the New King James Version says. Well, Rhode Island was one of the first 13 original states of the United States right after the American Revolution, and on the left of the screen was their seal, their great seal of the state of Rhode Island right after the American Revolution. In God we hope. Wow. How powerful is that? In God we hope. Right over that anchor. And today, what you see on the right is the seal of the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. The same state, only where does it say in God we hope? They've taken the in God we out and they just put hope. Interesting. Very interesting. So, again, that parallel of America turning away from God and taking God out of everything that we have done, even though after 150 years of God being included in each of our states and our nation as a whole, we've continued to remove God from our lives. And what happened to those in the Old Testament when they removed God from their lives? It was bad. It was famine. It was destruction. It was plagues. It was everything that we are seeing right now in the United States being repeated. Well, folks, I think it's time for revival from my perspective. What do you think? I hope this has touched you. If it has, click the like button, the subscribe button. Of course, click the little follow button and the little boxing gloves so you can rumble with me on Rumble if you're rumbling with me there. And click that little notification jingle bell so you can get notified the next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow for another episode of the Bible in 1 year with the preacher's husband. We'll see you then.